Welcome to the voice of St. Anthony Parish from Allston, Massachusetts, right here on WROL 950 AM 100.3 FM. And you can also hear us at CatholicAudiomedia.com. That's CatholicAudiomedia.com. Well, this week we're talking about Pope Francis's answers to the dubium from 5 cardinals, including Cardinal Raymond Burke, who is the Archbishop Emeritus of St. Louis. And he's retired now. And some people who are listening now may have subscribed to his newsletter, I guess it would be. And, we've talked about him previously in previous weeks, always in positive terms. He may have some disagreements with the synod and everything else, but as I say, he's still a cardinal, and he's a canon lawyer, and I am not. So, always in respectful terms, and we wouldn't do anything otherwise. So he's part of this dubium, which asked the questions of the Pope. And as I mentioned, the secular media is not going to understand some of this, and just the way they are, because they're focused on certain things and they don't understand a lot of things. So generally what happens is people are going to hear, well, you know what they said? Yeah, they probably said it wrong, and generally they do. So we're going to look at what is being said and go from there. So the next question they had in the dubium was in regards to the ordination of women. Now, a little bit of history. In the Catholic Church, women are not ordained. And the obvious question would be, well, why not? And that's always been the case for most of the Christianity for many years. And it's, by the way, it's also the case in Orthodox Christianity. So obviously, as I mentioned, some of the people in the media are always focusing on that. And I've said that the whole point of the synod is to understand that the role of the baptized is really the focus there. It's that all the baptized have a call to the mission of the church, and they have a call to a voice in the mission of the church. And which is very powerful, because in many circles, especially here in the United States, the belief in the AP, and this is why I bring up the secular media, the AP for years, I don't know if they still do, for years put out this whole line, well, we all know that the role of the laity is to pray, pray, and obey, which is a lie. That's a lie. At the end of every baptismal rite, is the statement that the person is called to be open to the Word of God so that they can proclaim God's Word to the glory of God. That's a rite at the end of baptism. So it nowhere says anywhere that the role of the laity is to pray, pray, and obey, as the AP says. So, what is the role of the laity? To be actively involved in the mission of the church. Now, several decades ago, Pope John Paul II put out a document where he made it clear that the women could not be ordained. And of course, that had its a lot of people weren't too happy with it, but that's basically what he said. That this tradition has been there and it stays. And he basically said that the church doesn't have the power to ordain women. And what happened is a lot of people take that to mean that the women have a lower status in the church. And he said absolutely not. Well, that's one of the things that's coming out from Pope Francis. And the whole concept is it's the role of the priest to say, this is what you will do, and you're to do it, is not Catholic teaching, is that we all have a role in our mission. We all have a role in the mission of the church, and we all have our places in that role, but that role is not a point of I give orders and you respond. It's not that at all. I told the story, and this was brought to my attention by a professor in the seminary who told about a very tragic story where always at the ordination there are these people that will be protesting for the ordination of women. Well, apparently, someone, either a seminarian or a priest, yelled out to that group, "Your role is to go home and take care of the altar linens," or something along those lines. Well, that's not the role of women in the church, and I've told you that. I mean, it can be the role of anyone in the church, but I've told you that the role is that we all play a point in the mission of the church. And one of my favorite aspects of ministry has been to do ministry where if we do an emergency call, I either have a nun or a laywoman, and the two of us will go and do the ministry. That way you have the perspective of both of us. You have me doing the sacramental role, and you may have the women doing the pastoral role along with helping me do the pastoral role, and that becomes very powerful. And that's really a more indicative role of the women of the church. We're going to talk more on the other side of the break. We'll be right back. Don't forget to tell others where they can find our program. You can hear us on WROL 950 AM and WROLradio.com at 3 p.m. Eastern Time, Monday through Friday. We then podcast the program on your favorite podcast platform and at CatholicAudiomedia.com. That's CatholicAudiomedia.com. You can also hear us at our parish website, that's St. AnthonyAlston.org. That is StAnthonyAlston.org. Let others know where you can find us and spread the word about the Catholic Audio Media podcast. We're back, and we're talking here about this powerful message that we're seeing in the Dubia. And now we're talking about the role of women, and ultimately it extends to the role of all the laity in the church. And there it is. Now, this is kind of an interesting thing because a lot of, as you heard, the Pope a few weeks ago discussed the issue of the reactionaries in the Catholic Church who are fighting against the synod. And there are cardinals and bishops and priests and lay people all involved, and they're against the synod. And basically because they don't understand the synod per se, and they're concerned that we're going to change doctrine. No, we're going to do this, that, and the other thing. And no, the Pope has made it very clear, no. But here's the thing that we look at, and one of the things that they want to do is they want to bring back the Latin Mass and go the way the Mass was in 1962. Well, remember, in 1962 and before, the Mass, which was formalized in Trent, basically had the priest doing everything. There were some people on the altar servers on the altar that would do certain responses, and they ring bells and help with incense and everything else. But all of that would happen during the Latin Mass, and the priest would do everything. And usually, well, he would do it with his back to the people, so the people couldn't see what the priest was doing except when he elevated the Eucharist. And so that really enforced that whole focus of the priest does everything and the lay people are along for the ride. And that brings up that image of the bus, that the priest drives the bus and the lay people are along for the ride until the bus arrives in heaven. That's a very common image in the Catholic Church, and it might exist in other churches as well. And the Vatican II basically put an end to that, and the Pope is expressing even more so how no, we're all involved in this mission, so it's not a case where the priest does everything, or the bishop, or the nuns, or the brothers, or the cardinals, or whatever, but we're all involved in the active role of the church. And one of the clear examples of that can be seen in Dorothy Day. We always bring up Dorothy Day. But Dorothy Day was really just a mover and shaker in the ways of the church being prophetic to the people. And so Dorothy Day, and if you ever want to switch over to our podcast channel of Catholic interviews, which you can find at CatholicAudiomedia.com, and look up the interviews I did with Scott Schaefer Duffy. I mean, they're just wonderful. And he talks about the inspiration of Dorothy Day. But Dorothy Day, obviously a woman, was very strongly rooted in bringing the message of the role of the laity to the world, which has always been the case. It's never been a case the laity have been called to sit on a bus, hypothetically, or what do you call it, analogously, but all called to an active role in the church. Nor are they called to pay, pray, and obey. They're called to an active role in the church. This is what we're called to do. So in that understanding, that whole role of what is the role of women in the church, it fits within that model, and it affirms better the dignity of the laity to be part of this mission, including, well, I don't mean it the way it's going to come out, including the women, well, obviously, but meaning that the whole concept of the laity are a lower status, so that women are a lower status, is not part of church teaching, and when people teach it, they are wrong. You know, one of the things that brings, because it also takes the idea of the priest on a pedestal, it brings this, when people say, well, I can't criticize that person, that's a priest. No, yes, you can, and in fact, it may in fact be your duty to do so. So keep all that in mind, and this is a really good answer to the role of women in the church. We'll talk more tomorrow. Have a blessed day.
I want to call your attention to Catholic TV, which offers great faith-filled, family-friendly programming 24 hours a day. You can find your cable channel at www.getcatholictv.com, and you can watch online on the free apps or check out the YouTube channel. Daily Mass, Rosaries, the Divine Mercy Chaplet, and the Our Lady of Perpetual Help Novena are all available online and on demand. Check out CatholicTV.com. If you would like to support our program, please consider a donation to St. Anthony Parish in Allston, Massachusetts. There are several ways to consider this. One is to purchase any of our merchandise, which you can find at the shopping tab at CatholicAudiomedia.com. That's CatholicAudiomedia.com. There are coffee mugs there. There's also my latest book, Encounter Christ in Your Humanity, all of which you can find at the shopping tab at CatholicAudiomedia.com. You can also donate to the show directly through either the Donate tab, also at CatholicAudiomedia.com, or by sending a donation through the U.S. Postal Service with your questions and comments at 43 Holton Street, Allston, Massachusetts, 02134. That's St. Anthony Parish, 43 Holton Street, Allston, Massachusetts, 02134. Finally, the best way you can support our parish is to attend Mass on Sundays at 10 o'clock and be a part of our parish. We thank you for any support you would like to give to St. Anthony Parish in Allston, Massachusetts, the sponsoring parish for this media outreach to Catholics and other Christians in the WROL, WEZE, and podcast listening audience. In Cristo vivimos.